welcome back to my channel. My name is Becky and today I thought I would film the story of how I gave birth to my son Cody. Now he's just turned 2, so it has been quite a while since I gave birth, but I do remember it pretty vividly. My son on a Tuesday morning, so on the Saturday before that I was 41 weeks and I kind of had a feeling that I would have went overdue anyway as it's my first baby. So I wasn't really too concerned, I just kind of wanted it to be over. So on that Saturday night, me and my husband went out to my friend's house and we just had a kind of late night. I just kind of thought there's no point in me just sitting about waiting for this to happen. And during that time I had like cramps and back pain, but I'd had that kind of all through my pregnancy, so I never thought that it was a sign of going into early labour. So that kind of continued on throughout the whole night, and then we got home about 2 in the morning and I tried to go to sleep, but I was just so uncomfortable. I just kept getting these cramps and I thought I'm going to record these and just see how long they last and how frequently they come. And they were coming every 20 minutes on the dot. So I was like, oh my god, like this is like early labour. So I thought, well, I better go to sleep then. So I tried to go to sleep, but I just couldn't. So I ended up just getting up, going into the bath, just doing things like that. And then they stayed at 20 minutes apart until the morning. And I think it was about 9 o'clock in the morning before I woke up my husband and told him what was going on. And obviously we were like, all go. We were like, right, you've had them all night long, this is going to happen. So I jumped in the shower, I started getting everything organised. We made like sandwiches and stuff like that to take to the hospital. We were all prepared, and then that was it. It just kept saying 20 minutes the full day. And then at about 9 o'clock in the night I decided to go to the hospital just to check it out, because it'd been going on now for like 24 hours. And when I went to the hospital, they told me that I was only 1 centimetre dilated. And I remember being so disappointed. I was like, I have had this all day long and I am 1 centimetre dilated. So she just said I could just go home. So I was like, fine. So I just went home and I just sat in the bath pretty much all night. And then at about, I don't know, maybe about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the night, they started going to every 7 minutes apart. But I was like, well, let's just see how the night goes before we start thinking about rushing back, because I knew I was only 1 centimetre, so it wasn't like the baby was going to come anytime soon. That leads us to the Monday. So I was still having contractions every 7 minutes apart. They were getting sore and sore, and I'd already arranged for my mum and dad to come up and watch our dog and things like that, so they were all there. So it just felt like we were just waiting for them to pick up for me to go back in. So that basically just continued on until about Monday lunchtime, and then I thought I'm just going to go back into the hospital because it's obviously been going on since Saturday night. So I went back in on Monday afternoon and they assessed me and said that I was 3 centimetres dilated. So I was like, oh my god, please just let this be over, let this be over. What they said is just, you can stay in the hospital because it's been going on for so long, but they couldn't really give me any like pain relief or gas and air or anything like that until I was like 5 centimetres dilated, because that's when you're in like active labour. So I basically just walked around the hospital, bounced on the birthing pole, that was it really. And then at about 7 o'clock that night I begged the midwife for a sweep. I hadn't had any sweeps. I was supposed to go in, I think, on that day to get the sweep, but obviously I was in the hospital, so I just asked if I could get it done and she did it. And I was only like 3 or 4 centimetres dilated at the time, and that was like later on at night. And then after she done that, what she said to me, which scared me to death, was my husband had to go home. She said, no, nobody's allowed to stay in the hospital if you're not in active labour. And I was like, when do they need to leave? And she was like, we'll need to leave like now, like pretty soon, within the next half an hour. And I don't know if that was what done it, but I was just like, this baby is coming out now. There's no way in hell I am getting left here on my own. And within about 15 minutes of having that soup and being told that, I started having contractions every 3 minutes. And they were like agony. Like so much worse than the early labour ones. And I thought they were bad. So my husband called the midwife back and she assessed me and she said, you're 5 centimetres, he can stay and you can go and you can gas in the air. And that was like the best thing that anyone had said to me since like Saturday night. So me and my husband went to the birthing suite. They gave me gas and air, and like an idiot I just took so much in. I literally probably just sucked on the thing for about 10 minutes straight and then ended up being sick everywhere. So yeah, I picked a nice outfit to give birth into, which I changed into before going in there, and then was sick all over it, so then I had to wear one of them gowny things where your bum hangs out. So I just started getting gas and air, and that was all that I took the whole way through the labour. And she told me at about 2 o'clock in the morning you should be ready to push or have your baby, based on kind of like how it was progressing, how the contractions were coming, and like the hours between when I was in active labour and things like that. So this part I can't really remember that well, because I just remember going into a zone where I didn't make any noise, I didn't speak, I literally just lay there, held the gas in the air, and every time I had a contraction I took it, and that was it. And my husband still says that was like the most scariest part of it all, because it was like I wasn't getting any response to anything, and I think I was just either in complete shock or just trying to deal with it. I'm not really like a type of person that would like scream and cause a big fuss anyway, so maybe that was just it, but that's just how I reacted when I was in that labour. So 2 o'clock came around, and all that I remember is me asking if I could push yet, and the midwife was like, no, you're at 9 centimetres, maybe in an hour. And I was like, okay. And then I just like shut off again, and then I remember asking again, like maybe like an hour later, can I push? And she said, no, you're still at 9. And then I think it was about 4 o'clock in the morning that all of these people just started coming in and started looking, and she started saying that she's failing to progress. And I remember just looking at my husband and thinking, I have no idea like what's going on. And I remember him asking the midwife, like, is our baby okay? And they were like, yes, he's fine, he's totally like not bothered at all. It was just that the cervix wasn't going over his head, so I was stuck at 9 and couldn't get to 10, and they wouldn't let me push obviously until I got to 10. So what they ended up having to do was I had 2 midwives in, and every time I had the contraction they would put their hand up there and they would move the cervix trying over his head. So they would do that, done it a few times, and then they were like, okay, it's over his head, you can push now. But then when I went to push, it had went back over his head again. So it was just like his head was too big to go through it. So they then decided at 5 o'clock in the morning to try and give me the drip, and I am going to say it's Pitocin, but I am not entirely sure, but I think it is. And that was basically just to speed up my contractions and just try and make them come really quickly and try and get this me to go from 9 centimetres to 10 so that I could just push. So they tried with that, and that wasn't having any effect, so they kept just putting their hand up there and moving the cervix, and then I would just push. And they did that from about, say, about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning until about 8 in the morning. So I'd been pushing for a good 4 hours, and I remember before giving birth they said you'll not push for any longer than like an hour, 2 hours, but obviously this is a different situation. All I know though is that the 4 hours didn't feel like 4 hours, they could have been like a minute. I couldn't tell the time. I had literally no idea how long I'd been in the room for, apart from looking at the clock. I remember looking at the clock once and seeing that it was like 4 o'clock, and then literally closing my eyes, looking again, and it was like 7 o'clock. And I was like, your mind is gone. It's just focusing on what's going on, you pushing the pain, dealing with that you're not really concerned about how long you're doing things for. Your husband, on the other hand, my husband was, I remember him thinking like, this has been hours and hours and hours, but they just kept saying, it's fine, don't worry, we have it under control. So about 8 o'clock, my husband had managed to convince them to call a doctor, because he just said, I can't bear to watch this any longer. And they had said they were planning on calling him in about 9, but they said they would call him in at 8. So they called a doctor, and where I live is pretty much in the middle of nowhere in the north of Scotland, so there was no doctor in the hospital I was in. The closest one was an hour and a half away, and I was like, are you joking me? Like, an hour and a half away? Are you serious? Like, could you not have phoned like at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning? Like, are you joking? You're waiting until like 8 o'clock and then you phone and then you know he's going to be an hour and a half. So yeah, so they just told me, just don't push, just relax, the baby's stuck, we'll just see, you might need a section or whatever. And I just was thinking, right, okay, I just kind of chill out as much as possible. And then at 9 o'clock the guy arrived, and the doctor told me that his head was too big. I could get a C-section or they could use forceps. And I was like, I don't really mind whatever. I just remember being like, just do whatever you can, just get this baby out of me. And they said, well, if you get the C-section, it will be, you know, like probably an hour or so, because we need to get you prepped and we need to get your husband prepped, and then we need to give you the spinal and all of that. And they said, but if you get forceps, we can literally just do it like right now. We can just do a wee bit of preparation and then that's you. And I was like, okay, do that. So for any of you that don't know, forceps is basically like, it's almost like salad tongs. It's like these big metal things, and they stick them up and then they clamp them around the baby's head, and then when you get in a contraction you push and then they pull, and then that pops the baby out. So I had just literally had gas in the air, never had any epidural or anything like that, and they started to get prepped, and he said, we'll give you an injection to numb the area and all of this. And when he was getting prepared, they noticed that Cody's heart rate was getting a bit distressed. So he just said, just take your gas in the air, close your eyes, and we'll just have to do this without any numbing, with any drugs, anything. And that right now is the most painful thing that will ever probably happen to me. But at the time, if you ever get this done, don't panic, because you will, it's like you go into this state where you're like, I don't care, it's coming out and that's it. And I remember I just took the gas in the air and I just looked away from my husband, because I just couldn't look at him. He was like in tears and I was like, I cannot look. And then I just looked at the midwife that was beside me, and I just kept looking at her the whole time, and I could feel the forceps going up, and I could feel them going right push, and then them pulling him down, and he came out that one time. And I just remember the feeling of him like coming right out, and then they put him on top of me, and I just remember looking down and like hearing him crying and being like, I cannot believe, like a part of me, it sounds bad, but a part of me thought like we might die. There was a part where when I was lying there and they said that the feeling to progress, need to call a doctor, an hour away, like that was really, really, really scary. And then to see my husband break down as well, I just thought, right, prepare myself mentally that he might come out and not be alive, or I might not make it. And when he came out, the relief of him being out just completely like swept away any pain I was feeling, and it was just like totally worth it. And I just remember looking at him, and I think it'd been like it had probably been like an hour or something, and I just like didn't even know. I was just like holding him and just like so in love with him. And yeah, I'm like extremely thankful for that. So then after having him, it was crazy. After having him, I got up and had a shower and put makeup on and all that. That just sounds bonkers to me now. But anyway, I did that, and then me and Cody stayed in that night, and then the next day we came home. The only thing I'll say about a forceps delivery is I was in pain, serious pain, for about 6 weeks. Couldn't bend down, couldn't sit on anything really, apart from like a cushion, and even that I was in agony, so I just basically spent most time standing. Really sore to do a pee, really sore to do a poo. I had 3 infections despite, you know, constant basically cleaning. So it wasn't pleasant, and then from the 6-week mark all the way up until 12 weeks I could still feel pain, but I could still sit, I could sit down now and I could like bend down and stuff like that, but I was in pain and it would be really tender. Like the scar was really sore. So I would say if you've got forceps, if you're anything like me, it could take you like 3-4 months to actually recover. And even now, 2 years on, I still feel pain sometimes. If I move or bend down in a certain way, I'll still have a little bit of pain. But I feel like no one ever talks about forceps deliveries. It's really just natural births or sections. I don't think forceps deliveries are very common these days. Well, at least that's what I was told from my midwife. But obviously they're useful if you need to get the baby out quick, and they certainly did the job. And you'll get over the trauma of seeing the big salad tongue thing going up you. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel. I make mummy type videos, so I make cleaning videos, baby name videos, and we're also trying for our second baby at the moment. I know I am totally mad because I've just told you that story, but I'm also making vlogs about that journey as well. So if you want to subscribe, then you can follow along the journey with me. Thank you, bye!